The scent of pine and wet earth filled my lungs as I stood with my head bowed, hair falling forward to shield my face from the crowd. Rain had come earlier that morning, leaving everything damp and heavy with moisture. It made the wooden platform beneath my bare feet slick and cold. The air around me buzzed with whispers. Hundreds of wolf shifters gathered in the forest clearing, their excitement palpable as they waited for the auction to begin. I wasn't meant to be here, not like this. Not as merchandise. My fingers traced the small silver pendant hanging at my neck, my mother's last gift before she died, a crescent moon cradled by protective hands. "Your strength isn't always visible," she'd whispered to me. "But it's there, in your quiet moments, in your persistence." The pendant had been passed down for generations in our family, through a line of proud female wolves who had served their packs with dignity. Now I stood without dignity, without a pack, labeled defective. "Next," called the auctioneer, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "Female, 24 years old, healthy, good bloodline from the Eastern Territories." He paused, and I knew what was coming. The shameful qualification that had stripped me of my value, that had allowed my former alpha to discard me like unwanted clothing. "Barren," he announced, and the word hung in the air like a sentence. "Unable to bear pups. Starting bid at 50 gold pieces." The crowd's energy shifted, interest waned. Some turned to their neighbors, no longer bothering to whisper their disdain. What use is a she-wolf who can't whelp? Might as well get a human servant. Poor investment, even at that price. Each comment was a lash against skin already raw with humiliation. 3 years I had been mated to Devon, the son of my pack's beta. 3 years of hoping each moon cycle would bring news of a pregnancy. 3 years of disappointment until the healer confirmed what many had begun to suspect. My womb would never quicken with life. Devon had wasted no time dissolving our bond and returning me to my father's house. My father, in turn, had wasted no time selling me to the auction house. 50 gold pieces, came a lone bid from somewhere in the back. Probably someone looking for cheap household help. The auctioneer looked disappointed but nodded. 50 gold pieces? First bid? My gaze remained fixed on the rough wooden planks beneath me, studying the patterns of the grain, trying to disappear into myself. Around my wrists, silver cuffs prevented shifting. Not that I would have tried to escape. Where would I go? Who would take in a barren female with no pack? 60, called another voice, and I felt a flicker of surprise that there was any competition at all. 70, countered the first bidder. 100, said a third voice, and my head snapped up despite my best efforts to appear unmoved. The bidder was a heavy-set man with a cruel twist to his mouth. I recognized his insignia. He ran the pleasure houses in the border territories, where wolves and humans alike could purchase companionship for the night. My stomach clenched. Some barren females ended up in such establishments, their bodies still useful even if their wombs were not. 100 gold pieces, the auctioneer repeated, his interest renewed. "Do I hear 110? Silence fell. The pleasure house owner smiled, revealing yellowed teeth. I forced myself to breathe evenly, though panic fluttered in my chest like a trapped bird. 100 going once. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the damp air or my thin shift dress. Something had changed in the atmosphere of the clearing. The gathered wolves shifted uneasily, heads turning toward the back of the crowd. 100 going twice, 10,000 gold pieces. The voice that cut through the clearing was deep and commanding, the kind that expected, no, knew, it would be obeyed. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly as they parted like water to reveal the speaker. He strode forward with the confident grace of an apex predator, flanked by 4 guards whose expressions revealed nothing. But it wasn't the guards that held my attention. It was him. Tall, with shoulders that spoke of immense strength even beneath the fine black cloak he wore. His hair was dark as midnight, pulled back to reveal a face of sharp angles and cold authority. But it was his eyes that captured me, amber with flecks of gold, like sunlight through whiskey. The auctioneer stammered, Your Majesty, we are honored by your presence. Your Majesty." The words echoed in my head as understanding dawned. The Alpha King, ruler of all the northern territories and the most powerful shifter in our known world, What was he doing at a common wolf auction? 10,000 gold pieces, he repeated, his gaze now fixed directly on me. I wanted to look away, to hide from that penetrating stare that seemed to strip away every defense. But I couldn't move. Something in those eyes held me captive more effectively than any silver cuffs. "Sold," the auctioneer declared, banging his gavel with shaking hands. "To His Majesty, King Nathaniel." The crowd erupted in whispers, shock and speculation spreading like wildfire. I could hear fragments of their disbelief. The king himself? Buying a barren female must be a mistake. 10,000 gold for damaged goods. Nathaniel, the Alpha King, approached the platform, his movements deliberate and powerful. Each step closer sent my heart racing faster. What could he possibly want with me? Kings took fertile females as mates. Females who could provide heirs to secure their bloodline, not broken ones like me. One of his guards stepped forward with a small chest, presumably containing the payment. The auctioneer rushed to accept it, bowing repeatedly, but the king's eyes never left mine. When he reached the edge of the platform, he stood less than an arm's length away. This close, I could smell him. Forest after a thunderstorm, rich earth, and something wild and untamed that made my wolf stir despite the silver at my wrists. "Remove those," he commanded, gesturing to my restraints. The auctioneer hurried to obey, fumbling with the key. When the cuffs fell away, I resisted the urge to rub my wrists where the silver had left angry red marks. "What is your name?" the king asked. His voice was quieter now, meant only for me, but no less powerful. I swallowed, finding my voice with difficulty. "Eleanor," I answered. "Eleanor Hayes." Something flickered across his face. Recognition, but that was impossible. How would the Alpha King know of a disgraced female from a minor pack? "Come, Eleanor Hayes," he said, extending his hand toward me. "You belong to me now." The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened me. Instead, something deep within me, my wolf perhaps, responded to it, yearned toward it like a flower seeking the sun. With trembling fingers, I placed my hand in his. His skin was warm, almost hot against mine, and I felt a jolt of something at the contact. His fingers closed around mine, firm, but not painful. As he led me down from the platform, the crowd parted further, wolves bowing their heads as we passed. Their expressions ranged from confusion to outrage to morbid curiosity. What was their king doing with someone like me? I kept my eyes forward, chin lifted despite my shame. My mother's pendant felt warm against my skin, a reminder of who I had been before I was reduced to a commodity. "Your Majesty," came a voice from the side, the pleasure house owner who had bid on me earlier. "If I may be so bold, there are far more suitable females available. This one is barren, useless for continuing your line." The king stopped, and the temperature of the clearing seemed to drop several degrees. I felt his hand tighten around mine. "Are you presuming to question my choice?" he asked, his voice deceptively soft. The man blanched, dropping to one knee immediately. "No, Your Majesty, of course not. I merely thought, that is your first mistake," Nathaniel cut him off. "Thinking you understand my motives." His gaze swept the crowd. "That any of you do." No one dared speak after that. We continued our path through the silent assembly, toward a group of sleek black carriages waiting at the edge of the clearing. My mind raced with questions. Why would the most powerful alpha in the territories buy a barren female? Was this some kind of cruel joke? A political move I couldn't understand? As we approached the lead carriage, I became aware of the curious stares of his guards. They too seemed bewildered by their king's actions, though they were careful to hide it. "Your Majesty," one of them began cautiously, "shall we prepare separate transportation for your purchase?" The king's response was immediate and firm. "No, she rides with me." More shock rippled through those within earshot. Purchased wolves typically traveled with the servants or guards, not with their masters, especially not with royalty. Before I could process what was happening, I was being helped into a luxurious carriage with plush velvet seats and silver fittings. The king followed, settling across from me as the door closed, shutting us into sudden, tense privacy. The carriage began to move, The gentle sway and the clop of horses' hooves the only sounds for several long moments. I kept my gaze on my lap, where my hands twisted nervously together. "Look at me, Eleanor." I raised my eyes reluctantly to meet his. In the confined space of the carriage, his presence seemed even more overwhelming, his scent enveloping me completely. "Do you know why I bought you?" he asked. I shook my head slightly. "No, Your Majesty." "And because I've been searching for you," he said, his gaze intense enough to burn. "For a very long time." My breath caught in my throat. "I don't understand." A hint of a smile, the first I'd seen, touched his lips. "No, I don't imagine you do. Not yet." He leaned forward slightly. "But you will soon enough." The carriage continued its journey, taking me away from everything I'd known, toward a future I couldn't begin to comprehend. Outside the window, I caught glimpses of the forest rushing by, the landscape changing as we moved deeper into the northern territories, into the heart of the Alpha King's domain. And all I could think was that nothing in my life had prepared me for this moment, for being chosen when I thought myself worthless. For the first time since the healer had confirmed my barrenness, I felt something stir within me. Hope. The journey to the royal palace took 3 days. 3 days of traveling through dense forests and mountain passes, each mile taking me further from my former life. 3 days of carefully measured conversations with the Alpha King, who revealed little about his intentions, yet watched me with an intensity that left me breathless. "We'll arrive by nightfall," Nathaniel said on the morning of the 3rd day, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between us. Dawn light filtered through the carriage windows, casting his sharp features in gold. I nodded, my fingers unconsciously finding the silver pendant at my neck, a nervous habit I'd developed over the years. "That pendant," he observed, his eyes tracking the movement. "It means something to you." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. It was my mother's, and her mother's before her. "May I see it?" I hesitated, then slowly removed the necklace and placed it in his outstretched palm. His fingers closed around it gently, almost reverently. "The crescent moon," he murmured, studying the delicate silver work, symbol of the feminine divine, of cycles and rebirth. His thumb traced the protective hands that cradled the moon, and protection. Something about the way he said it, like he understood its significance beyond just a pretty trinket, made my wolf stir with curiosity. "It's been in my family for generations," I said. "My mother gave it to me before she died. She told me it would remind me of my strength when I needed it most." Nathaniel's eyes lifted to mine, something unreadable in their amber depths. "Your mother was wise." He returned the pendant, watching as I fastened it back around my neck. "When did she pass?" 7 years ago. Hunters with silver bullets." The old pain resurfaced, duller now, but never completely gone. "They thought they were tracking rogues, but they stumbled upon our hunting party instead." A muscle in his jaw tightened. I remember that incident. I had the hunters executed for their carelessness. The casual mention of execution reminded me of who I was sitting across from. Not just an alpha, but the Alpha King. Judge, jury, and executioner for all wolves in his territories. "Your family name is Hayes," he continued, changing the subject. "From the Eastern Territories. Your alpha was Gregory Stone?" I nodded, surprised he knew such details. "Yes, Your Majesty. And your father? He's the one who sold you to the auction house?" Shame burned through me at the reminder. "Thomas Hayes. He's a warrior in the pack." I swallowed hard. He couldn't bear the disgrace of having a barren daughter returned to his house. Nathaniel's expression darkened. "And your former mate, the one who dissolved your bond when he discovered you couldn't bear children?" "Devon," I said softly. "Devon Reed, son of our beta." "Devon Reed," he repeated, as if committing the name to memory. Something about the way he said it sent a chill down my spine. "How long were you mated?" 3 years. "And in those 3 years, did he ever consider that perhaps he was the one who couldn't produce offspring?" The question startled me. No one, not Devon, not our pack healer, not a single member of my former pack, had ever suggested such a possibility. It had been assumed, without question, that the deficiency was mine. No. I admitted. The fault was assigned to me. Nathaniel made a sound low in his throat, almost a growl. Of course it was. It's always easier to blame the female. He gazed out the window for a long moment, then returned his attention to me. What do you know of me, Eleanor? The abrupt change of subject caught me off guard. Only what everyone knows, Your Majesty. That you've ruled the Northern Territories for nearly a decade, that you're the strongest alpha to emerge in generations. And about my personal life, I shifted uncomfortably. There are rumors that you've refused to take a mate despite pressure from your council. A hint of amusement crossed his face. Rumors indeed. The truth is more complex. He leaned forward slightly. I haven't refused to take a mate. I've been waiting for the right one. My heart stuttered in my chest, but I quickly quashed the foolish hope that tried to bloom. He couldn't possibly mean me. A king needed heirs. I was barren. The equation was simple. I'm sure your council will be pleased when you find her, I said carefully. Nathaniel's lips curved in a smile that held no humor. My council rarely approves of my decisions. This one least of all, I suspect. Before I could ask what he meant, the carriage slowed, and I glanced out the window. We had crested a hill, revealing a breathtaking vista below. Nestled in a valley surrounded by mountains was a vast city of stone and timber, and at its center, rising majestically against the backdrop of a glacial lake, stood the royal palace. Even from a distance, I could see it was magnificent. White stone towers reaching toward the sky, banners in royal blue and silver fluttering from the spires. Welcome to Moonhaven, Nathaniel said, watching my reaction. It's beautiful, I whispered, awed despite my circumstances. As we descended into the valley, the city came to life around us. People, both wolves and humans, stopped to bow as our carriage passed. Many looked curiously at the royal procession, probably wondering what had taken their king away for so many days. When we finally passed through the palace gates, my nerves returned full force. Servants and guards lined the courtyard, heads bowed in deference. The carriage came to a stop, and Nathaniel exited first, then extended his hand to help me down. The moment my feet touched the cobblestones of the royal palace, whispers erupted among the staff. I caught fragments of their confusion. Who is she? Bought at an auction. Look at her hair. Definitely not from our territories. Why would the king bring home a purchased female? I kept my head high, my mother's words echoing in my mind. Your strength isn't always visible, but it's there, in your quiet moments, in your persistence. Nathaniel placed a hand at the small of my back, guiding me toward the grand entrance. The warmth of his touch seeped through the thin fabric of my dress, sending an unexpected thrill along my spine. Your Majesty! A tall, severe-looking woman hurried down the palace steps, her expression a mixture of relief and consternation. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled into a tight bun, and she wore the insignia of the royal household on her immaculate uniform. We weren't expecting your return until tomorrow. The council has been... She stopped abruptly when her gaze fell on me, her eyes widening in shock before she schooled her features back to neutral. This is Lady Helena, Nathaniel introduced. My head of household. Helena, this is Eleanor Hayes. Lady Helena's nostrils flared slightly. She was scenting me, assessing. Her expression revealed nothing, but the slight stiffening of her posture told me all I needed to know about her initial judgment. Miss Hayes, she acknowledged with a curt nod. Welcome to the royal palace. The welcome sounded forced, perfunctory. Prepare the blue suite in the east wing, Nathaniel instructed. Eleanor will be staying there. This pronouncement caused another ripple of shock. I could sense it in the guards and servants within earshot. The east wing, I would later learn, was the royal family's private residence, not where guests or purchased wolves were typically housed. Of course, Your Majesty, Lady Helena replied, though her expression suggested she had many questions she dared not ask. I'll see to it immediately. She turned and hurried back into the palace, presumably to relay the king's unexpected orders. Come, Nathaniel said to me, his hand still at my back. You must be tired from our journey. He led me through massive doors into a grand entrance hall with soaring ceilings and intricate murals depicting the history of the wolf packs. Guards and servants bowed as we passed, their eyes following us with undisguised curiosity. We were halfway across the hall when a door at the far end burst open, and a group of men in formal attire strode in. From their bearing and the richness of their clothing, I guessed they were members of the royal council. "Your Majesty," called the one in front, a distinguished older man with silver at his temples. "We've just heard of your return. The delegation from the Southern Territories arrived yesterday, and they're most anxious to—" He stopped mid-sentence as he noticed me, confusion followed by alarm crossing his features. "Lord Bennet," Nathaniel greeted him coolly, "I'll meet with the Southern delegation tomorrow. For now, I have more pressing matters to attend to." Lord Bennet's gaze flicked between Nathaniel and me, his brow furrowing deeper. "Of course, Your Majesty, but if I might inquire who—" "This is Eleanor Hayes," Nathaniel said simply, offering no further explanation. The councilman's nostrils flared as he scented me, and I saw the exact moment he realized what I was, purchased goods, and Barren at that. His expression shifted to barely concealed horror. "Your Majesty," he said in a strangled voice, "perhaps we could speak privately for a moment?" "Not now, Bennet." The dismissal in Nathaniel's tone was absolute. "But Your Majesty, surely you understand the implications of—" I said not now. The words were soft, but carried a dangerous undertone that made everyone in the vicinity freeze. The alpha power behind them was unmistakable, a reminder that regardless of titles and councils, Nathaniel was first and foremost a predator, the most dangerous predator in all the territories. Lord Bennet took a step back, lowering his eyes submissively. "As you wish, Your Majesty." Nathaniel turned to me, his expression softening marginally. "Come, I'll show you to your rooms." We continued through the palace, leaving the stunned council members behind. I could feel their eyes boring into my back as we departed, could almost hear their minds racing with speculation and alarm. "That was Lord Bennet," Nathaniel explained as we ascended a grand staircase, "my head counselor and a perpetual thorn in my side." "He seemed displeased by my presence," I ventured carefully. A dry laugh escaped Nathaniel. "Bennet would be displeased by anything that interferes with his carefully laid plans for the kingdom, and you, Eleanor Hayes, were definitely not in his plans." We reached the East Wing, where the decor became noticeably more personal. Fewer formal portraits and ceremonial weapons, more comfortable furnishings and artwork chosen for beauty rather than political significance. Nathaniel led me to a set of double doors carved with a motif of moonflowers and wolves. Inside was the most beautiful suite I had ever seen, a sitting room in shades of blue and silver, with tall windows overlooking the lake, a bedchamber beyond with a massive four-poster bed, and what appeared to be a private bathing chamber. "These will be your quarters," Nathaniel said, watching me take it all in with wide eyes. "Is it to your liking?" "It's overwhelming," I admitted, turning in a slow circle. The rooms were larger than my father's entire house had been. "You'll adjust," he said, with quiet confidence. "The staff will bring your evening meal here tonight. I imagine you'd prefer to rest rather than face the formal dining hall and all its curious occupants." The consideration surprised me. "Thank you, Your Majesty." He stepped closer, and suddenly the spacious room felt much smaller. "When we're alone, you may call me Nathaniel." My pulse quickened at his proximity. "Thank you, Nathaniel." He reached out, and for a wild moment, I thought he might touch my face. Instead, his fingers gently lifted the silver pendant from where it rested against my collarbone. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice low and intense, "we will begin to unravel the truth, Eleanor Hayes, about why you were branded Barren. About why I brought you here." His eyes locked with mine. "About who you really are." Before I could ask what he meant, a knock sounded at the door. Lady Helena entered, followed by two young women carrying linens and what appeared to be fresh clothing. "Your rooms are prepared, Miss Hayes," she announced, her tone professional but cool. Nathaniel released my pendant and stepped back. "I'll leave you to settle in. Rest well, Eleanor. Tomorrow will bring many revelations." With that cryptic statement, he departed, leaving me standing in a stranger's palace, surrounded by luxury I'd never imagined, with questions multiplying in my mind like wildfire. as Lady Helena efficiently directed the servants in preparing my bath and unpacking the new garments. All in my size, I noted with surprise. I moved to the window, gazing out at the unfamiliar landscape that was now, apparently, my home. What did the Alpha King mean about unraveling the truth? What truth could possibly explain why he would pay a fortune for a barren female from a minor pack? And the most unsettling question of all, why did a part of me, a growing part, hope that whatever his reasons, they would mean I could stay? Sleep eluded me that night, despite the luxurious bed with its silken sheets and down pillows. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nathaniel's face, heard his enigmatic words echoing in my mind. Tomorrow will bring many revelations. About who you really are. Who did he think I was? I was Eleanor Hayes, daughter of a mid-ranking warrior, former mate to Abeda's son, barren female sold at auction. There were no mysteries there, only shame and disappointment. Dawn was breaking when exhaustion finally claimed me, painting my dreams with amber eyes and whispered promises. I awoke to sunlight streaming through windows that a servant must have uncovered while I slept. A young woman with dark hair stood at the foot of my bed, hands folded demurely before her. "Good morning, Miss Hayes," she greeted when she saw I was awake. "I'm Lily, assigned to be your personal attendant." I sat up, running a hand through my tangled hair, feeling disoriented. "What time is it?" "Just past noon, miss. The king instructed that you be allowed to rest." She gestured to a tray on a nearby table. "I've brought lunch, and a bath is being prepared." The mention of Nathaniel brought yesterday's events rushing back. "The king... has he sent for me?" Lily nodded. "He requests your presence in the royal study at 2:00. She hesitated, then added with careful neutrality, "Lady Helena asked me to help you dress appropriately for the occasion." I understood the implication. My appearance would reflect on the king, and the servants had likely been instructed to ensure I didn't embarrass him. The thought stung more than it should have. After bathing and eating, I found myself standing before a wardrobe filled with clothing I'd never seen before. Dresses in fine fabrics, all in my size. Lily selected one in a deep emerald green, cut in a style that was elegant, yet modest. "This color will complement your hair beautifully," she said as she helped me into it. As she brushed my long blonde hair until it shone like pale gold in the sunlight, I gathered my courage to ask, "Lily, what do people say about me? About why the king brought me here?" Her hands stilled for a moment before resuming their work. "It's not my place to repeat palace gossip, miss. Please," I urged softly. "I need to know what I'm facing," she sighed. "There are many theories. Some say you must possess some rare gift or knowledge the king values. Others speculate you're a political pawn, perhaps a relative of someone he wishes to ally with." She hesitated. "And some say less kind things, that I'm to be his concubine," I supplied bluntly. "A plaything he'll tire of quickly?" Lily's cheeks colored. "Something like that, miss, though none who have served the king believe he would be so dishonorable." I fingered my mother's pendant, drawing strength from its familiar contours. "Thank you for your honesty." At precisely 2:00, a palace guard escorted me through corridors I hadn't seen the previous day. Wolves of various ranks stopped to stare as I passed, some openly hostile, others merely curious. I kept my chin lifted, my steps measured, though inside my stomach churned with anxiety. The royal study proved to be a vast room lined with bookshelves reaching to the ceiling, maps and charts spread across large tables, and a massive desk positioned before windows overlooking the palace grounds. Nathaniel stood at that desk, examining a document with such concentration that he didn't immediately notice our arrival. The guard announced me with a bow. "Miss Hayes, Your Majesty." Nathaniel looked up, and the intensity in his gaze as it swept over me sent a rush of warmth to my cheeks. "Leave us," he commanded the guard, who promptly withdrew, closing the heavy door behind him. For a long moment, Nathaniel simply studied me, making me acutely aware of how the emerald dress hugged my curves, how my hair fell loose around my shoulders, rather than in the practical braid I usually wore. "Green suits you," he said finally, moving around the desk to approach me, though I suspect any color would. I wasn't sure how to respond to such a compliment from a king, so I simply murmured, "Thank you." He gestured to a seating area near a fireplace, where a small flame crackled despite the warm day. Please sit. I settled onto a leather chair, trying to appear more composed than I felt. Nathaniel took the seat across from me, his posture relaxed, yet somehow still commanding. You slept well? He inquired. Yes, thank you. I lied, unwilling to admit how his cryptic words had kept me awake. A slight smile tugged at his lips. You're not a skilled liar, Eleanor. Heat crept up my neck. I had much to think about. As did I. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You have questions. Many of them, I imagine. Yes, I admitted, beginning with why you bought me at that auction. Why you paid such an exorbitant sum for a barren female. Something flickered in his eyes at the word barren. Anger, perhaps, though not directed at me. What if I told you that you aren't barren at all? The words hit me like a physical blow. What? You are not barren, Eleanor, he repeated, his voice firm with conviction. You were falsely declared so. I shook my head. Disbelief and a dangerous flicker of hope warring within me. That's impossible. The pack healer examined me. Devon and I tried for 3 years to conceive. Your pack healer was either incompetent or deliberately deceptive, Nathaniel stated. And as for your former mate, his lip curled in disgust. Devon Reed is the one who cannot father children. My mind reeled, unable to process what he was saying. How could you possibly know this? Instead of answering directly, Nathaniel rose and moved to his desk, retrieving a leather-bound volume. He returned and placed it in my hands. Do you know what this is? I examined the book. It was old, the leather cracked with age, the pages yellowed. On its cover was an embossed symbol, a crescent moon cradled by protective hands. The same symbol as my pendant. My breath caught. This is the same as my necklace. Yes. He sat beside me now, close enough that his scent, that intoxicating mix of forest and thunder and wild power, enveloped me. This is the Book of Lineages. It records the bloodlines of all the ancient wolf families, dating back centuries. He gently took the book from my hands and opened it to a page marked with a ribbon. Including yours. I stared at the page, at the intricate family tree drawn there. At the top was a name, Celine Hayes, followed by a line of female descendants. My eyes traced the names downward. Ilara, Lunette, Marisol, Diana, all the way to my mother, Eliza, and finally, to me, Eleanor. I don't understand, I whispered. These are just names. My family's lineage. Not just any lineage, Nathaniel said quietly. Your family descends directly from Celine, the first Moon Mother. The term sent a shiver through me. Moon Mothers were figures from our oldest legends, females born with rare gifts connected to the moon itself. They were said to be powerful healers, dreamwalkers, and in some stories, the only females who could bear the children of Alpha Kings, but they were just that, legends. Stories told around pack fires. That's impossible, I said, shaking my head. Moon Mothers are myths, are they? Nathaniel reached out, his fingers gently lifting my pendant. This symbol has been passed down through your maternal line for 15 generations. It marks the bloodline of the Moon Mothers. If what you're saying were true, I argued, why would no one in my pack know this? Why would I have been cast aside as barren? Because knowledge of the Moon Mothers has been deliberately suppressed for centuries, he explained. After the Great Pack Wars, when the territories were divided, those in power feared the influence the Moon Mothers held. They were either hunted down or forced into hiding. Many took ordinary mates in minor packs, concealing their true nature, passing their legacy only to their daughters through symbols like this. He touched my pendant again. And you believe I am one of these Moon Mothers? The idea was so preposterous I almost laughed. I know you are, he replied with absolute certainty. I've been searching for you for years. Why? I asked, my voice barely audible even to my own ears. His gaze held mine, intense and unwavering. Because only a Moon Mother can be the true mate of an Alpha King. The declaration hung in the air between us, heavy with implications I could scarcely begin to process. True mates, the rarest and most sacred of bonds between wolves, were the stuff of romantic tales, not real life, and certainly not between someone like me and the most powerful alpha in all the territories. That's not possible, I whispered. Isn't it? Nathaniel's hand moved from my pendant to cut my cheek, his touch sending sparks across my skin. Haven't you felt it since the moment our eyes met at that auction, the pull between us? The way your wolf responds to mine even when you try to deny it? I couldn't deny it. There had been something, a connection I couldn't explain, from the first moment I'd seen him. But I'd attributed it to his power, his dominance as an alpha. Even if moon mothers exist, I said, forcing logic into the conversation. Even if by some miracle I am one, how could you possibly have known? You'd never seen me before the auction. A shadow crossed his face. I saw you once, 7 years ago. You were with your mother on a hunting expedition near the border of my territories. My breath caught. The day the hunters came, he nodded grimly. I was there with a small contingent of my guards. We heard the shots and came to investigate. By the time we arrived, the hunters had fled. There were casualties. His voice tightened. Your mother among them. Grief, long dulled but never truly gone, washed over me anew. You were there? You saw her die? I held her hand as she passed, he said softly. And the revelation stunned me. She knew who I was immediately. And in her final moments, she made me promise something. What? I whispered. To find her daughter. To find you. When the time was right, she told me you would bear the pendant, that you were the last of your line, and that you were destined to be my true mate. His thumb stroked my cheek. She made me swear to protect you. Tears filled my eyes at the thought of my mother's last moments, at the weight of what Nathaniel was revealing. Why didn't you come for me then? Why wait 7 years? You were too young, he explained. Barely 17, and I needed to be certain. Moon mothers only come into their full power after their 24th year, after they've experienced the struggles that forge their inner strength. So you just watched me from afar, let me mate with Devon, let me believe I was barren and worthless? Hurt and anger flared within me. I had no choice, he said, though regret shadowed his features. If I had claimed you too early, before your powers had awakened, the bond would never have fully formed. And if I had revealed your true nature to your pack, you would have become a target for those who fear the return of the Moon Mothers. His jaw tightened. I did have Devon investigated when you were paired with him. There was nothing in his history to suggest he was incapable of fathering children. That revelation came later. I stood abruptly, needing space to think, to breathe. This is too much. You're asking me to believe that everything I thought I knew about myself is a lie. That I'm some mythical being from legend. That I'm destined to be the mate of a king. I shook my head. It's madness. Nathaniel rose as well, but didn't crowd me. I understand your skepticism, but deep down, you know there's truth in what I'm saying. Your wolf recognizes it, even if you're not ready to. And he was right. Part of me did feel the truth of his words resonating in my very bones. My wolf, usually so quiet and subdued, seemed to be straining toward him, recognizing something I couldn't yet fully comprehend. If what you say is true, I said slowly, if I am this Moon Mother, what does that mean? What changes? Everything, he answered simply. You are not barren, Eleanor. You are, in fact, extraordinarily fertile, but only with your true mate, with me. Any children we conceive would be exceptionally powerful, which is why the bloodline was feared and hunted. The implications made my head spin. Not barren, not broken, all this time. All that shame and rejection. Devon couldn't father children, Nathaniel continued, a hard edge entering his voice. He was born with a condition that rendered him sterile, a fact his family has kept hidden for generations. They knew what you were, Eleanor, or at least, they suspected your lineage held some special power. That's why they arranged your mating in the first place. They hoped that somehow you could overcome Devon's deficiency. I struggled to find words for such a betrayal. How could they do that? Power, Nathaniel said simply. The ambition to climb higher, to secure their position. When you couldn't give Devon children, they turned their failure into yours and discarded you. His eyes flashed with barely contained rage. Your father knew as well. That's why he was so quick to sell you after Devon dissolved your mating. He feared what would happen when the truth eventually came to light. I sank back into my chair, overwhelmed. My entire life, my shame, my rejection, my pain had been built on lies, and now this man, this king, was offering me a completely different reality. I need time, I managed. This is too much to absorb all at once. Nathaniel nodded, his expression softening. Of course. I've waited 7 years. I can grant you the time you need. He moved toward the door, then paused. But know this, Eleanor Hayes. You were never meant to be someone's discarded mate or purchased property. You were born to be a queen. With those words hanging in the air between us, he departed, leaving me alone with a book of ancient lineages, a pendant that suddenly felt heavier around my neck, and the earth-shattering possibility that everything I'd believed about myself might be wrong. That evening, as I stood at the window of my chambers watching the sun set over the glacial lake, a knock sounded at my door. I expected Lily, bringing my evening meal, but instead found Lady Helena standing rigidly in the corridor. "The king has requested your presence at dinner tonight," she announced, her tone making it clear this was not an invitation but a command. "In the private dining room, not the main hall." I nodded, still too stunned by the day's revelations to form much of a response. Lady Helena hesitated, then stepped into my room, closing the door behind her. When she spoke again, her voice was lower, tinged with something that might have been concern. "Miss Hayes, I feel I must warn you. The palace is abuzz with speculation about your presence here. Not all of it is kind." "I imagined as much," I replied. "The King's Council is particularly disturbed. They've been pressing for his mating ceremony with Princess Isolde of the Southern Territories for months. The arrival of a..." She faltered, clearly searching for a diplomatic term. "A purchased, supposedly barren female?" I supplied flatly. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Precisely. It has caused considerable alarm." I turned back to the window, letting the fading sunlight warm my face. "And what do you think, Lady Helena? Do you share the council's alarm?" "What I think doesn't matter," she replied stiffly. "It matters to me," I said, turning to face her again. "You run this household. You've served the king for years, I imagine. Your insight would be valuable." Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, perhaps, that I would value her opinion. "I have served 3 Alpha Kings," she said after a moment. "Nathaniel's grandfather, his father, and now him. In all that time, I have never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." The admission caught me off guard. "And how is that?" "Like a drowning man who's finally found solid ground." She straightened her already perfect posture. "But be warned, Miss Hayes. The forces aligned against you are powerful. The council, the noble families who expected their daughters might catch the king's eye, the Southern Territories who will see your presence as a slight against Princess Isolde." She shook her head. "You have powerful enemies before you've even begun." With that sobering warning, she departed, leaving me to prepare for dinner with the Alpha King, a dinner where we would undoubtedly continue unraveling the tangled web of destiny and deception that had brought us together. Dinner with Nathaniel was an intimate affair, in a small dining room with windows overlooking the moonlit lake. Candles flickered on the table set for 2, casting warm light that softened the hard edges of the Alpha King's face. He rose when I entered, his eyes sweeping over me in the midnight blue gown Lily had selected. "You look beautiful," he said simply, pulling out my chair. I sat, hyper-aware of his proximity, as he took his own seat across from me. Servants brought course after course of delicacies I'd never tasted, but I barely noticed the food, my mind still reeling from the day's revelations. "You're troubled," Nathaniel observed, his perceptiveness unnerving. "Overwhelmed," I corrected. "Everything I thought I knew about myself has been upended in the space of a day," he nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I promised you time, and I meant it, but there are matters we must discuss regardless." He set down his fork. "The council has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. They want to meet you." My heart sank. Lady Helena warned me they wouldn't be pleased by my presence. "They're terrified by your presence," he countered with a hint of satisfaction. "As they should be. Your existence threatens centuries of carefully maintained power structures." "I'm not sure I'm ready to face them," I admitted. "I barely understand what I am myself." Nathaniel's expression softened. You don't have to face them alone. I'll be there. His hand reached across the table to cover mine, the contact sending a jolt of awareness through me. But before that meeting, there's somewhere I need to take you, somewhere that might help you understand. After dinner, he led me through the palace to a section I hadn't seen before. We descended a spiral staircase, past guards who bowed deeply, into what appeared to be the oldest part of the structure. The walls here were rough-hewn stone, the air cool, and tinged with a faint mineral scent. The heart of the palace lies beneath, Nathaniel explained as we walked. Built around a natural phenomenon that existed long before wolves claimed these territories, we reached an ancient wooden door reinforced with iron bands. Nathaniel produced a key from around his neck, one I hadn't noticed before, hidden beneath his shirt, and unlocked it. The door swung open to reveal a cavern that took my breath away. The chamber was vast, its ceiling disappearing into darkness above. But what captured my attention was the pool in its center, a perfect circle of still water that glowed with an ethereal blue light. The walls around it were embedded with crystals that reflected the light, creating a constellation of stars around us. The moon pool, Nathaniel said quietly. Sacred to our kind since the first wolves walked these lands, and especially sacred to moon mothers. I approached the edge of the pool, drawn by something I couldn't explain, a pull deep within my core, my wolf straining toward the glowing water. What is it? I whispered. The waters are imbued with the essence of the moon itself, he explained, coming to stand beside me. Legend says the first moon mother, Selene, was born from these waters during a lunar eclipse. Whether that's true or simply symbolic, the pool has always been a place where moon mothers could connect with their power. I stared at my reflection in the luminous water, seeing myself as if for the first time, not as the broken, barren female I'd believed myself to be, but as something older, more powerful. The silver pendant at my neck seemed to respond to the pool's light, glowing with the same blue luminescence. What am I supposed to do? I asked, uncertain. Touch the water, Nathaniel urged gently. Let it remind you of who you truly are. I hesitated, then slowly knelt and extended my hand toward the surface. The moment my fingertips broke the water's stillness, everything changed. A surge of energy rushed through me, cold and hot simultaneously, powerful yet gentle, ancient and new all at once. Images flashed behind my eyes. Women with my features but different faces, each wearing the crescent pendant, each standing before kings and warriors, their hands glowing with healing light, their voices commanding respect even from the most dominant alphas. And with the images came knowledge, understanding flowing into me like water filling an empty vessel. I saw how moon mothers had once been revered as the balance to alpha power, how they alone could temper the aggression of dominant males, how their rare ability to bear powerful offspring had made them both treasured and feared. I saw the great pack wars, the slaughter of moon mothers who refused to align with certain factions, the desperate decision to go into hiding, to preserve the bloodline by disappearing into ordinary packs, passing their legacy mother to daughter through whispers and symbols. And I saw my mother, standing before a younger Nathaniel, her life bleeding away from silver bullet wounds, making him promise to find me, to protect me, to restore the balance that had been lost. When I withdrew my hand from the water, I was trembling. Nathaniel knelt beside me, his expression a mixture of concern and wonder. You felt it, he said. It wasn't a question. I saw them, I whispered. All of them. My ancestors. The moon mothers who came before me. I looked up at him, new certainty settling into my bones. And I saw my mother, with you. His jaw tightened at the memory. Then you understand why I had to wait. Why I had to be certain. I nodded slowly. The timing had to be right. My power had to mature. I looked down at my hands, which seemed unchanged yet felt different. As if energy hummed just beneath my skin, waiting to be channeled. What happens now? Now, he said, rising and offering me his hand. We face the council, and after that we face the world. That night, I slept deeply for the first time since arriving at the palace, my dreams filled with moonlight and ancient wisdom, and the comforting presence of generations of strong women who had carried the same blood, the same gift, the same burden as me. I awoke with clarity I hadn't felt in years, perhaps ever. As Lily helped me dress in a formal gown of silver white, more suited to a royal audience than the auction block, I felt my mother's pendant warm against my skin, a reminder of who I was and where I came from. "You look different today, miss," Lily observed as she arranged my hair, weaving silver threads through the pale strands. "More confident. I feel different," I admitted, "like I've awakened from a long sleep." When Nathaniel came to escort me to the council chamber, his eyes widened slightly at the sight of me. "You've changed," he murmured, taking my hand and bringing it to his lips in a gesture that sent heat coursing through me. "I remembered," I corrected, "thanks to the moon pool." Understanding passed between us, a connection deeper than words could express. He offered me his arm, and together we walked toward the confrontation that awaited us. The council chamber was imposing, a large circular room with a massive round table, reminiscent of ancient warriors' councils. 12 men sat around it, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility as we entered. Lord Bennet, the head counselor, rose to his feet. "Your Majesty," he greeted Nathaniel stiffly before his gaze shifted to me with poorly disguised contempt. "And Miss Hayes?" "Counselors," Nathaniel acknowledged, his voice cool and commanding. "I believe I know why you've called this meeting, so let us dispense with pretense. Miss Hayes is here at my invitation and under my protection. Any disrespect toward her will be considered disrespect toward your king." The warning hung in the air, silencing whatever objections had been brewing. "Please, be seated," Nathaniel continued, guiding me to a chair at his right hand, the position traditionally reserved for a queen or mate. This did not go unnoticed by the council. Lord Bennet cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, while we would never question your personal choices, there is the matter of the Southern Alliance to consider. Princess Isolda's family expects a formal mating announcement within the month." "There will be no such announcement," Nathaniel stated flatly. A counselor further down the table, a portly man with a florid complexion, spluttered, "But the alliance. The treaty depends on this union." "The treaty will be renegotiated," Nathaniel replied. "The southern territories need our protection from the rogues at their borders far more than we need their timber exports. They will accept new terms. And what of heirs?" another counselor demanded. "The kingdom requires succession. And this female," he gestured dismissively toward me, "is known to be Barren." I felt a flash of the old shame, but it dissolved quickly in the face of what I now knew to be true. Before Nathaniel could respond, I straightened in my chair and addressed the counselor directly. "I am not Barren," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I am a moon mother." The effect of my words was immediate and dramatic. Several counselors leapt to their feet in alarm. Others went pale, gripping the table as if for support. Lord Bennet looked as though he'd been struck. "Impossible," he breathed. "The moon mothers were extinct. Hunted to the last during the Great Wars." "Not extinct," Nathaniel corrected. "Hidden, protected by those who understood their importance to the balance of power." His hand found mine under the table, a silent gesture of support. "Eleanor is the last of their line, the daughter of Eliza Hayes, granddaughter of Diana, descendant of Selene herself." "This cannot be," another counselor protested. "It's a trick, a ploy to avoid the Southern Alliance." "It is the truth," I said, rising to my feet. The pendant at my throat began to glow with the same blue luminescence as the moon pool, drawing gasps from around the table. "I am, what I have always been, though I did not know it until now." "If she truly is a moon mother," Lord Bennet said, struggling to maintain composure, "then she would have the power to heal," I finished for him, "to dream walk, to bear children of exceptional power, but only with my true mate." I turned to look at Nathaniel, feeling the truth of the words as I spoke them. "Only with the Alpha King." Murmurs broke out around the table, fear and speculation mingling as the counselors processed what this meant for their carefully laid plans. "The bloodline was supposed to end," one of the older counselors muttered. "After the wars, it was decided, for the good of all territories, that no moon mother should ever again hold influence over pack politics." "Decided by whom?" Nathaniel's voice cut like ice. By the very alphas who feared their power being checked? By those who preferred absolute authority without the balance that Moon Mothers provided? This changes everything, Lord Bennett said, his political mind clearly already racing ahead to implications and consequences. The southern territories, the eastern packs, the nomadic clans, all will want to curry favor once word spreads. And some will want her eliminated, added another counselor grimly. There are those who still remember the old ways, who fear what the return of a Moon Mother might mean. Let them fear, Nathaniel replied, his alpha power filling the room like a physical force. Any who threaten her will answer to me. He stood beside me, our shoulders nearly touching, presenting a united front before the council. I felt stronger in his presence, more certain of my newfound identity. There is one way to secure her position beyond question, Lord Bennett said slowly, his gaze moving between Nathaniel and me. One way to ensure that no pack, territory, or kingdom would dare move against her. The mating ceremony, Nathaniel nodded. At the next full moon, my heart leapt at his words. The full moon ceremony was the most sacred of all wolf traditions. A binding that went beyond political alliances or convenience. One that could never be broken. That's barely 2 weeks away, a counselor protested. There isn't time to make the proper arrangements, to invite the necessary dignitaries. Then work faster, Nathaniel cut him off. Send riders to all territories today. I want representatives from every major pack present to witness our union. And the southern territories? Lord Bennett pressed. Princess Isolde and her family will consider this a grave insult. Invite them as well, Nathaniel said with a cold smile. Let them see for themselves why their alliance through marriage is no longer necessary or desired. He turned to me then, his expression softening as our eyes met. That is, if you are willing, Eleanor, I would not presume to make this decision for you. In that moment, before the entire council, the Alpha King, the most dominant and powerful wolf in all the territories, waited on my answer, offering me a choice rather than imposing his will. And in that moment, whatever doubts I might have harbored dissolved like morning mist under sunlight. This was who I was meant to be. This was where I belonged. Yes, I said simply. I am willing. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. The palace transformed as preparations for the mating ceremony consumed every corridor and courtyard. Delegations began arriving from distant territories, curious to see the female who had captured the Alpha King's attention, the rumored Moon Mother, whose existence changed the balance of power throughout the wolf world. I spent hours each day at the moon pool, reconnecting with the ancient wisdom of my lineage, feeling my dormant abilities awakening. I learned to channel the healing energy that flowed through my hands, to walk the dream paths between consciousness and sleep, to sense the emotions of those around me. And each evening, Nathaniel and I would dine together, learning one another, building the foundation of what would soon be an unbreakable bond. There will be challenges, he warned me on the eve of the ceremony as we walked together in the palace gardens, the nearly full moon illuminating the path. Not everyone will accept your position easily. I know, I replied, no longer the fearful, uncertain female who had stood on an auction block, but we'll face them together. He stopped, turning to me with an intensity that took my breath away. I've waited for you my entire life, Eleanor Hayes, since before I knew your name, before I understood what I was waiting for. And I spent my life not knowing who I truly was, I said softly, reaching up to touch his face, until you found me. His hand covered mine, pressing it against his cheek. Tomorrow you become my queen. Tomorrow, I agreed, I become who I was always meant to be. The mating ceremony took place beneath the full moon in the palace courtyard, transformed by hundreds of floating lanterns and cascades of moonflowers. Representatives from every territory stood witness as I walked toward Nathaniel, dressed in a gown of silver and white that caught the moonlight like water. The traditional words were spoken, ancient vows that had bound wolves together since the earliest days of our kind. But when it came time for the marking, the moment when the alpha would typically bite his mate's neck to claim her, Nathaniel did something unprecedented. He knelt before me, baring his own neck. A gasp rippled through the assembly. An alpha, especially an alpha king, would never submit in such a way, would never make himself vulnerable, even symbolically. Balance, Nathaniel said loud enough for all to hear. The Moon Mother, and the Alpha King. Neither above the other, but equal in power and purpose. Understanding the profound significance of his gesture, I knelt as well, bringing us to the same level. Together, simultaneously, we marked each other, his teeth at my neck, mine at his, sealing a bond that defied centuries of tradition, even as it honored the most ancient of all. As the witnesses erupted in exclamations of shock and wonder, I felt the bond snap into place between us, a connection deeper than thought, stronger than the physical, a merging of souls that neither time nor distance could sever. Through that bond, I felt his emotions as if they were my own. His fierce joy, his relief at having found me, his unwavering determination to protect what we had found together. And I knew he could feel mine, my wonder, my gratitude, my growing love for the wolf who had seen my true worth when everyone else had branded me worthless. The formal reception that followed was a political minefield. I stood beside Nathaniel as pack after pack came to pay respects. Some sincere, others clearly assessing the new power dynamic, calculating how it might benefit or threaten them. The delegation from the Southern Territories was particularly frosty, Princess Isolda's father barely concealing his fury at the perceived slight. But even he dared not openly challenge the Alpha King and his Moon Mother mate. "This isn't over," he muttered as he bowed stiffly before us. "The Southern packs will not forget this betrayal." "There was no betrayal," I replied before Nathaniel could speak, my voice carrying the new authority of my position. "No formal agreement was ever made. And alliances need not come only through mating bonds." The Southern Alpha's eyes widened slightly at my directness. Perhaps he had expected a meek female, cowed by her sudden elevation. "Perhaps," I continued, "we might discuss trade agreements that benefit both territories equally, without the need for political marriages." Nathaniel's approval flowed through our bond, warm and encouraging. "My queen has a keen political mind," he remarked. "You would do well to consider her suggestion." Before the Southern Alpha could respond, a commotion at the entrance to the Great Hall drew everyone's attention. Guards moved to intercept newcomers who had not been on the guest list. My breath caught as I recognized the intruders. Devon, my former mate, along with my father and several warriors from my old pack. "Let them approach," Nathaniel commanded, his hand finding mine. They came forward, Devon's expression a mixture of disbelief and outrage, my father's face ashen with shock or fear. "So it's true," Devon said when they reached us, his voice tight with anger. "Our Barren castoff has somehow bewitched the Alpha King himself." Murmurs rippled through the assembly at his disrespectful tone. Nathaniel's power filled the room, a palpable pressure that had several wolves instinctively backing away. "Choose your next words with extreme care," he warned Devon. "You speak to your queen." Devon's jaw clenched. "We've come to expose this farce." "This female," he jabbed a finger toward me, "is barren, defective. I was mated to her for 3 years without a single pregnancy. Whatever lies she's told you." "The lie," I interrupted, my voice steady, "was that I was barren." I stepped forward, no longer afraid of the man who had once held such power over me. "You are the one who cannot father children, Devon Reed, a fact your family has hidden for generations." Color drained from his face. "That's a vicious falsehood." "Is it?" I turned to his companions. "Did you know the Reed line hasn't produced children from their own seed in 4 generations? They've used surrogates and adoption, hiding their deficiency while blaming their mates." My father stepped forward, his expression pleading. "Eleanor, whatever resentment you harbor—" "Silence," Nathaniel commanded, and my father's mouth snapped shut. "You sold your daughter, your own blood, to an auction house like unwanted property. You, who should have protected her legacy, who knew what she truly was." The accusation hung in the air. "I didn't know," my father protested weakly. "Not with certainty. There were rumors in your mother's family, but nothing concrete." "You knew enough," I said, the hurt of his betrayal still fresh despite everything that had happened since. "You knew there was something different about me, about our lineage. That's why you were so quick to be rid of me when Devon rejected me. You feared the truth would emerge." Devon, recovering from his shock, sneered. Moon mothers are legends, bedtime stories for pups. You expect us to believe you're some mythical being? In answer, I let my power rise to the surface, the gift I'd been reconnecting with at the moon pool. Blue light emanated from my hands, from the pendant at my throat, from my eyes. I heard gasps from around the hall. I am the last descendant of Selene, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. I am a moon mother, true mate to the Alpha King and queen of the Northern Territories. I stepped closer to Devon, who flinched away from the power radiating from me. And I am not Barren. As if to punctuate my words, I felt a flutter deep within me, a sensation I'd never experienced before. Through our newly formed bond, I felt Nathaniel's shock and then overwhelming joy as he sensed it too. Life, taking root inside me. Our child, conceived on our mating night, growing already thanks to the accelerated gestation of moon mother pregnancies. Nathaniel was at my side instantly, his hand coming to rest protectively over my abdomen. "The council chamber," he said to the guards. "Escort these visitors there. We will address their intrusion properly after we've concluded the reception." As the guards led Devon and my father away, Nathaniel turned to me, his public facade dropping momentarily to reveal his wonder. "Already?" he whispered, low enough that only I could hear. I nodded, tears of joy threatening to spill. The legends say moon mother pregnancies are swift and certain when conceived with their true mate. His hand tightened on mine, and through our bond, I felt his fierce protectiveness, his elation, his love. Then we have even more reason to celebrate tonight. The reception continued, but with a new energy flowing through the hall. Word spread quickly, not of the pregnancy, which we kept private for now, but of the confrontation, of the power I had displayed. By the time the last guest departed, no one in attendance doubted what I was or my right to stand beside the Alpha King. Later that night, as Nathaniel and I stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, our chambers now, looking out over the kingdom that was now ours to lead together, I found myself touching the silver pendant that had been passed down through generations to reach me. "Your mother would be proud," Nathaniel said softly, his arms encircling me from behind, his hand coming to rest over mine on the pendant. "She knew, didn't she?" I asked. "Even as she was dying, she knew this day would come." "She saw it in a dream," he confirmed. "Moon mothers often have the gift of foresight in their final moments. She saw you standing here, as queen. She saw our child." I leaned back against him, drawing strength and comfort from his solid presence. I spent so long believing I was broken, that I would never have a family of my own. "And now you have a kingdom," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my temple. "And a child on the way who will be the first of a new generation of moon mothers and alpha kings." I turned in his arms to face him, reaching up to trace the strong line of his jaw. "What happens now? With Devon and my father?" "Justice," he said simply. "But not vengeance. That's the balance we must strike, power tempered with compassion. Alpha strength guided by moon mother wisdom." I nodded, understanding. They would face consequences for their actions, but we would not be ruled by bitterness or resentment. We had too much to look forward to, too much to build together. "I never imagined this," I admitted. "Standing here as queen, carrying the heir to the throne, loved by the most powerful alpha in the territories. And I never imagined finding you," he replied, his forehead coming to rest against mine. "The auction was my last hope. I'd searched for so long, followed so many false leads. And there I was," I smiled, "being sold for being barren, until the Alpha King chose you," he finished, echoing the journey that had brought us together. "Shocking the entire pack," I added, with a soft laugh. As the moon rose higher over our kingdom, casting its silver light over the land that would one day belong to our children, I felt a sense of rightness, of completion. The path that had brought me here had been painful, filled with rejection and shame and uncertainty. But standing now in the arms of my mate, my king, I wouldn't change a single step of that journey, for it had led me home.